you when risk assessment is definitely required. Existing shipboard operations and tasks, routine tasks. In case of new operations and tasks, obviously, if new operations and tasks come in, you will have to identify the hazard, check the probability of the hazard, and check the consequences of the hazard in case they occur. And then we have this one. So the next item which we would like to discuss is hazard identification. I just mentioned previously, that is called the hazard. A hazard is simply a situation or condition which has the capability to cause damage, harm, or other loss. That's a hazard. Accident, near miss, that's all. A hazard commonly be observed and recognized, can only be observed and recognized. Hazards are around us and cannot be taken away. Risk, however, can be identified, analyzed, and dealt with. That is, it can be reduced. Before the harmful effects of a hazard can be determined, existing controls, measures that may mitigate the effects of that hazard has to be taken into account. That is, to reduce the risk, we have to put control measures, safety is in place. Possible types of hazards on ships. Let us see some possible types of hazards. Okay, this is a simple table. Let us say during mooring operation, the hazard would be struck by falling object, or there can be burn, crushing injuries. Let us take welding. What would be the hazards? Fire, there could be explosion, there could be hit by object. These are the different hazards for typical shipboard operation. So I'll just give you a few minutes. You can just go through this chart, and for routine shipboard operation, these are the hazards already identified. You may be able to identify some more on your ship, because the hazards are not limited. For your ship, maybe there would be more hazards. Let us see some more of them. Risk evaluation and analysis, calculation of risk. It is normally evaluated as a function of the severity of the possible consequences for a hazard, which we take as C, and the frequency or probability P of that hazard occurring. So probability we take as P, the severity of the consequences we take as C, and then we finally analyze the risk evaluation or analysis. So this would be, risk is consequences of the hazard if it occurs multiplied by the probability of the hazard occurring. That is risk or risk evaluation or risk analysis. The risk matrix, to get that product of probability and consequences, there is a standard risk matrix on board from which we will come to know the risk, whether how severe it is or how less severe it is. So frequency is very likely, more often than every 6 months. So these are the probabilities. Very likely if the hazard occurs more often than every 6 months. Possibility is little lower if it is once in 5 years. Unlikely if it is once in 10 years. Very unlikely, practically impossible if it is once per 30 years. This is a standard matrix showing you the probability of a hazard occurring. This is a risk evaluation matrix. Let us say for a particular job, the likelihood is 1. That is highly unlikely. And even if that highly unlikely hazard does occur, consequences is very trivial. So the product is 1 in the green zone. We can go ahead with the job. On the other hand, let us say a task has got a hazard which is very likely to occur, and the consequences are too harmful, not very, but harmful. So the product of the consequences, 2 into the likelihood, 3, gives us the product as 6. Substantial. So we will have to put some control elements out here. Green is absolutely okay. Light green, tolerable. We can proceed with the job. Moderate, okay. Substantial, we have to put some extra control elements. Intolerable, we cannot do the job unless we reduce the product of probability and the consequences into this region. Let us see some another typical matrix. This is, so all the green zone is you can go ahead with the job. Low risk. Yellow is a medium risk, yes, with some small minor control methods, safety, you can go ahead. Red, risk is very, very high. You have to reduce the risk by either reducing the probability or by reducing the consequences. This is a form of matrix that you would find on board to help you carry out risk evaluation or risk assessment. This matrix is called the risk evaluation matrix. This side is the likelihood, probability of the hazard occurring, and the rows are the consequences or severity of that hazard if it does occur. Risk mitigation or reduction. Risk mitigation strategies are designed to eliminate, reduce, or control the impact, consequences of the hazard occurring, that is, different safety methods prior to an injury or damage to the property or environment. Safety measures taken to reduce the risk element. LRP as low as reasonably practicable. Sometimes we cannot eliminate the probability or we cannot eliminate the consequences of the hazard, but we have to reduce them to as low as possible. We cannot eliminate them in some tasks. So that is called LR, as low as reasonably practicable principle. The method of reducing the risk level of a hazard can be put in one scale and balanced against efforts needed in another. Like if to reduce the risk, we need a huge amount of effort, then we have to go for LR as low as is reasonably possible. Purpose of risk reduction, we have already saw, just a revision. Eliminate hazards with intolerable risk at whatever cost. If this is not practicable, abandoning the operation should be considered. If you cannot reduce the risk to a reasonable amount within the green zone in the matrix, then that operation should be abandoned. Reducing the risk of those in LRP region if it is cost effective. Higher cost could be considered acceptable if the risk is close to the intolerable region. That red zone is intolerable. If it is close to that, then whatever is the cost, you have to reduce the risk. Reducing the risk levels of those in the negligible region with minimal effort. This is a LRP triangle. On top we see the risk is justifiable only in exceptional circumstances, though this is an unacceptable region. Tolerable only when risk reduction is not practicable or is disproportionate to the benefits achieved. This will be called the tolerable region. And finally, the base of the triangle is a generally acceptable region where the risk is within the comfort zone, that is the green zone. List of onboard jobs requiring risk assessment, just a few lists. Hot work in enclosed space or deck. This list is not exhaustive. I'm just giving you some examples of shipboard jobs which require risk assessment or risk analysis. Enclosed space entry, any work which involves disabling a critical equipment, steering gear, alarm system, firefighting detection system, life-saving appliances, not to mention the main engine. The main engine is also a critical piece of equipment. Working on electrical circuits, especially high voltage circuits. On board, that's more than 1000 volts. Working on pressurized systems, steam, air, hydraulic, etc. Major maintenance or repair jobs, main engine decarb specifically, turbocharger overhauling involving heavy items. Movement, removal or renewal of heavy machinery parts, cylinder head, piston, liner, big pumps, etc. Critical areas of navigation, so long we were seeing the machinery space. Critical areas of navigation, shallow waters, dense traffic and difficult night passages, all these require risk assessment. Yeah, this is not a so-called job, but it is a task on board. Critical areas of navigation is a task which we carry out routinely. Any other operation considered appropriate by shipboard management. So the list is not exhaustive. Any other task that the shipboard management deems necessary where the risk assessment should be carried out. When directed by shore management, normally DPA. So, gentlemen, that is the end of the risk assessment, risk analysis, hazard identification, risk assessment matrix, and the various tasks or various situations where we have to carry out risk assessment on board. Thank you. Till my next lecture. Bye.